Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're reading the Municipalists, Part 7 by Seth Fried. Standing outside were two men dressed in matching suits, which I was surprised to notice were the USMS cut. The men could have been mistaken for field agents except that their suits were black instead of the usual navy and they weren't wearing fedoras. The bigger one must have been at least 6 foot 5 inches and had a thick beard as well as blonde hair that came to his shoulders. He stood holding his axe at the ready and looking down at the demolished door as if to intimidate it into further submission. The other one was leaning forward as he brushed splinters and dust from the broken door off his pant legs. When he stood up and adjusted his thin black tie, it occurred to me with surprise that I was looking at Stuart Biggs. As soon as he spotted me, he tilted his head back and smiled, showing a mouth of large, perfectly white teeth. "Henry Thompson," he said, "as I live and breathe." "Stuart?" He spoke rapidly to his companion in an odd-sounding language. "Sorry, Henry," he said. "Nothing personal." The blond man grunted in response and stepped toward me, lifting his axe. I fell back into the stairs as he took a wide, heavy swing. The axe blade narrowly missed my head and sinking into the wall. I scrambled up the stairs as he started to tug the axe free, and it wasn't long before I heard them both heading up after me, their pace slow and deliberate. On the third floor, I slipped into my room, shut the door, and began digging through my travel bag for my new cell phone. Once I found it, I got down on the floor and did a quick army crawl under the bed. Luckily, Owen had gone quiet in the drawer, and I was hopeful that it would take the two men a while to find me hiding under the sagging twin bed. When I hit the phone's power button, the screen lit up with a series of loud but welcoming chimes before asking me to register my new tech mobile device. Below, I could hear the footfalls of the two men making their way up the stairs as they talked to one another in their foreign tongue. Their tone was casual. They could have been discussing anything from baseball to their plans for that night once they had finished killing me. I pressed the button indicating that I did not want to register my phone. An hourglass appeared, rotated, and then disappeared before a message flashed onto the screen. "You must register in order to use your new tech mobile device." It sounded like the two men were walking down the third-floor hallway, smashing things indiscriminately as they went. The phone asked me for my preferred username. I pushed random keys on the screen's keyboard until I had entered the required number of characters. When I hit the submit the resulting text was autocorrected to "Salad Daughter Urine Gut." The hourglass reappeared and rotated. A new message. "The username Salad Daughter Urine Gut is not available. Please select any one of the following usernames." I selected Gut Urine 474 and was immediately prompted to create a password. I mashed the keyboard again and hit enter, prompting another message. "The password is weak. Are you sure you would like to continue?" I selected yes. The man's voice sounded close. The hourglass reappeared and was followed by a flashing screen that congratulated me on registering and asked me to re-enter my password. In the same moment, the door to the room flew off its hinges. The blond man pulled me out from under the bed by my ankle and rolled me onto my back. Biggs stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets. My phone had fallen to the floor, and the blond man crushed it under his heel before raising his axe as if to bring the handle down onto my face. I instinctively brought my leg up and kicked, planting my heel into the man's crotch as hard as I could. He dropped the axe and fell to his knees. Biggs gasped at the sight of his partner on the floor. He ran to his side and began to rub his shoulders. "Sperry," he said, "Sperry." I grabbed the axe as I stood up and held it in front of me, more as a partition than a weapon. "Biggs, what's going on?" I said. He turned to me as he continued rubbing his partner's shoulders, his eyes wide with anger and righteous disbelief. "Can you give us a minute, can you? You kicked Teddy right in the testicles, which is a pretty cheap shot." I was taken aback by the anger in his voice. There was also something strange about his enunciation that I didn't recall from our interactions at headquarters, a slight sibilance that wasn't quite a lisp. "He was going to hit me with an axe." "Yeah, with the handle," he said. "You would have been fine." On the stairs, he swung the blade at me. "So he got carried away a few minutes ago. Does that mean he deserves to be kicked in the nuts for the rest of his life?" Teddy moaned at the mention of his. When he winced, baring his teeth, I noticed that his too were incredibly white. "You mean you're not trying to kill me?" "Not here," he said, sounding irritated. "We're supposed to throw you off the Lenox Street Bridge." I was still unsure whether I was prepared to hit someone with an axe when Teddy rose to his feet with the pained expression of an athlete who knew he would be expected to tough it out. He took a deep breath breath and stepped in a slow circle looking for his axe. As soon as he noticed I was holding it, he took a few steps forward and unceremoniously punched me in the face, taking it from me as easily as if I had handed it to him. I stumbled back toward the bed, and Biggs resumed his position near the door, watching the proceedings with a look of grim satisfaction that suggested I probably wouldn't make it to Lenox Street. Teddy lifted the axe and gave it another broad, heavy swing in my direction. I fell back onto the bed, which collapsed under me, making the blade land too high. As Teddy once again struggled to pull his axe from the wall, I kicked him in the crotch a second time. The look of astonishment on his face was indescribable. Biggs rushed forward and lifted me by my collar, then hit me in the mouth and threw me into the bureau, which splintered beneath me. The underwear came spilling out, and I saw the tie clip slide across the floor. Biggs wrenched the axe out of the wall and looked ready to bring it down on me himself, but suddenly Owen appeared in the doorway and shouted for everyone to freeze. He was holding a samurai sword, which he leveled at Biggs. "Drop the axe," Owen said. "It's the nerd or your life." He chopped the air with his sword, and his interface produced a simultaneous whistling sound that was a little too loud to be realistic, though neither of the men seemed to notice. Biggs tossed the axe to the floor and put his hands up. Teddy was still on the ground and had to push himself up to his knees before following suit. Owen gestured for me to stand up, then ordered the two men to sit in the middle of the floor with their backs together. "All right, Thompson," he said, pretending to be careful as he slid his sword into the scabbard hanging from his belt. "Tie them up." Having just narrowly escaping a beheading, I found it difficult to match Owen's poise. "With what?" "Oh, I don't know," he said, his voice taking on a certain sharpness as he pointed toward the demolished brew. "How about some of those disgusting pairs of underwear over there?" "Or," Biggs chimed in, "you could use our ties." Owen silenced him by pulling his sword a few inches from its scabbard and slamming it back down. I tied their hands behind their backs and noticed that their fingerprints looked as if they had been burned. Owen noticed it, too, and tried to ask the men about it. Teddy kept his head bowed in silent prayer over his genitals, and Biggs just laughed, saying that they'd both been doing some ironing. "How did you find us?" Owen said. "This is our city," Biggs answered. "No one sets foot here without us knowing." "Who's us?" I asked. Owen shook his head like I'd just embarrassed him, then took a step toward Biggs. "Where's Kirkland?" Biggs smiled. "Kirkland who?" Owen unsheathed the katana and raised it over his head before letting out a blood-curdling howl. He kept the sword overhead for a moment, observing Biggs for any sign that his resolve had been weakened. When Biggs only looked confused, Owen frowned and put the sword away again. He told me to get my things together and stepped out into the hallway before adding, "And don't forget your clip tie." I stooped to pick up the clip and felt a sharp pinch in my back as well as a stiffness in my calf from when I had been thrown through the burrow. "Wait a second," I said, trying not to limp as I followed him into the hallway. I waved him away from the door and lowered my voice. "Can you contact the police or something?" "No," he said, crossing his arms in front of his chest. "But aren't you like a technological marvel capable of contacting every single police station in the world in 1/1000th of the time it would take you to fall down a flight of stairs?" "Yes, you're right, but I'm not calling the cops." When I asked him why not, he shrugged. "Oh, a couple reasons," Owen said. "First of all, on the plane you insulted my disguises, and when I told you that my feelings were hurt, you persisted in being rude." I started to stammer out something in my defense, but Owen cut me off. "And when this goon showed up, I couldn't do anything about it because you put me in a drawer, and judging from the smashed low-end cell phone in there, I'm guessing when you needed help, I wasn't even your first choice. So while I am obligated to help you get out of here alive, I'm not going to be taking orders from someone whose attitude is so completely toxic and unhelpful." There was an awkward silence between us before I came out with the only thing I could think to say, even though it felt absurd saying it to a computer. "Owen, I'm sorry." He considered my apology a little while before accepting it. "Wonderful," I said. "Can you call the police now?" "No." I took a deep breath, keeping Owen's apparent vulnerability in mind. I felt it was probably for the best that I remain calm. "Why not?" "Well," Owen said, "I still don't really feel like being, because that was a terrible apology. Also, we were sent to the city to find out what Biggs knows, which we can't do if he's in custody. And lastly, according to police scanners, Bayo called 911 about 7 minutes ago, so get your bag, get Biggs, and let's get out of here." Biggs and Teddy had left a black Buick Sudan at an angle in the middle of the street with its engine still running. Owen's sword kept Biggs docile while I popped the trunk and loaded him inside. Once I was behind the wheel, I saw Owen standing by the passenger side door. He shoved his sword up the sleeve of his jacket, then cleared his throat. I followed his eyes down to a black, soft leather briefcase on the passenger seat. I had to stare at it for a moment before I understood. I threw the briefcase into the back, and he appeared in the seat next to me as I straightened the car out and pulled off down the street. That's it for part 7. Thank you everybody so much for coming. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.